Don't like your $50 raise? Quit. My boss mocked. I walked out. The next day, 67 miles in revenue vanished. When the founder rushed back, he asked one question. Who did you let go? I had been with Helix Systems for 7 years, almost from the beginning. Back then, it was just an ambitious startup squeezed into 2 rented rooms above a strip mall, with servers stacked like Jenga blocks and a dream bigger than our budget. I wasn't just an employee. I was one of the architects of the company's crown jewel, a proprietary platform that grew into the backbone of Helix, processing $67 million in annual recurring revenue. The code was my fingerprint, my signature. I had written entire frameworks from scratch, patched fires at 3 a.m., and even missed holidays to make sure the system never went dark. My blood was in that machine, but all of that changed the day they hired Evan Drake. He arrived like a storm, polished suits, MBA jargon, spreadsheets instead of solutions. He was young, hungry, and full of that boardroom arrogance you only get from believing numbers matter more than people. To him, engineers were replaceable cogs. Code was just a product, and loyalty meant nothing if it didn't show up on a balance sheet. Still, I kept my head down. I worked late nights, patched issues before customers even noticed, and carried entire weekends on my shoulders just to keep Helix alive. I told myself that eventually someone, Jonathan Mercer, the founder, maybe, would remember the people who had built the foundation. When annual reviews rolled around, I expected, if not praise, at least recognition, a fair raise, a nod to the years I'd spent keeping the ship afloat. Instead, I walked into a glass-walled conference room where Evan sat alone, legs crossed, sipping a latte like he'd been waiting to deliver bad news all day. "Adrian," he said smoothly, motioning for me to sit. "Let's talk about your future here." I sat, already wary. He flipped a folder open, scribbled something with his pen, and then, with a smirk, slid a paper across the table. "Congratulations," he said. "You're getting a raise." I glanced at the figure. 50, not per hour, not per week, per month. For a moment, I thought it had to be a typo, maybe a missing zero. But when I looked up, his grin told me otherwise. "Is this supposed to be serious?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He leaned forward, smirk widening. "You should be grateful. A raise is a raise. Most people are lucky to get anything in this economy. Don't like it? There's the door." The silence between us stretched like a tightrope. I felt my patience unraveling, years of swallowed frustration bubbling to the surface. For 7 years, I had poured my life into Helix. For 7 years, I had skipped birthdays, ruined relationships, sacrificed health and sleep, all for a company that was now being run by a man who couldn't even read the code I wrote. This wasn't just about the money. It was about respect. And in that moment, I realized there wasn't a shred of it left for me in that room. I folded the paper neatly, set it back on the table, and stood up. "I'll take the door," I said quietly. Evan leaned back in his chair, smug as ever, as though he had just won some petty battle. "Best of luck, Adrian. Don't let the door hit you on the way out." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because here was the truth Evan didn't know. Helix's platform, the lifeblood that processed millions of dollars every day, wasn't just lines of code. It was a living organism, one I had built, nurtured, and re-engineered over 7 years. Every hidden patch, every undocumented workaround, every little fix that kept it breathing in the dark hours of the night. That was me. The system knew me, and without me, it would bleed. I walked out of the building with nothing but my laptop bag, and a strange calm in my chest. Not anger, not regret, just a quiet certainty that Evan's arrogance was about to meet reality. The next morning, I woke up to a buzzing phone. Dozens of missed calls. The first text I saw was from a colleague. The system's down. Nothing's working. Customers are furious. CFO's losing it. Another message followed. We can't process transactions. Evan's panicking. They're asking if you're available to consult. By noon, the damage was catastrophic. Transactions froze midstream. Accounts locked. Data flows stalled. Helix's pipeline, $67 million in recurring revenue, screeched to a grinding halt. Customers screamed on social media. Competitors circled like sharks. Investors demanded answers. And somewhere inside that glass-walled office, Evan Drake was learning the lesson every arrogant manager eventually learns. You can't replace the person who built the foundation. The man who had sneered at me and told me to take the door was about to discover exactly who he had underestimated. And the fallout was only beginning. By the time I checked the news the next morning, Helix Systems was already trending, and not in the way companies want to trend. Platform failure cripples Helix, millions at stake. Clients revolt after Helix outage. Is this the beginning of the end? The headlines flashed across tech blogs, Twitter feeds, and financial wires. Analysts speculated about security breaches. Investors panicked. Clients threatened lawsuits. The company I had helped build was collapsing in real time, all within 24 hours of me walking out the door. Inside Helix, chaos reigned. Evan Drake, the new operations manager, who had smugly told me to take the door, now barked orders at engineers who barely knew the system's skeleton, let alone its heart. The CFO was holed up in his office, fielding non-stop calls from furious shareholders. Every hour offline meant millions lost, and there was no patch in sight. By evening, Jonathan Mercer himself, the founder, had cut short his vacation in Italy and flown back overnight. I heard from a colleague that when Jonathan entered headquarters the next morning, the air shifted. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a force. He had built Helix from nothing. 2 laptops, a rented office, and a dream. And he had once recruited me straight out of grad school. Because as he said, you think in systems, not just code. Jonathan had always been calm, almost unnervingly so. But that morning, as he walked into the boardroom, his tan gone and his jaw tight, the building itself seemed to hold its breath. Evan stood at the head of the table, sweating through his pressed shirt, trying to maintain control. We're working on it, sir, Evan said quickly, clicking through slides that showed half-finished recovery plans. But the system is, complex. It'll take time. Jonathan's voice cut him down mid-sentence. Cold. Precise. Who did you let go? The room fell silent. Executives glanced at one another, waiting for someone else to speak. Evan shifted uncomfortably. He walked out. Some senior engineer complained about his raise. Jonathan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Which engineer? Adrian Cole. The silence that followed was heavier than steel. Jonathan's face drained of color. His hands curled into fists on the table. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said the words that would echo through Helix for years. You fired Adrian. God help us. The boardroom froze. My friend later told me Jonathan's fury was unlike anything they'd ever seen. He slammed his fist against the table, rattling glasses of water, and glared at Evan as if he were looking at the smoking wreckage of his life's work. Do you have any idea what you've done? Jonathan demanded, his voice low and dangerous. He didn't just build our platform. He is the platform. Every core system, every hidden failsafe, every workaround that's kept us alive for 7 years came from him. Without Adrian, we don't have a company. You've crippled us. Evan stammered something about redundancy and team ownership. But Jonathan cut him down again. Redundancy, Jonathan barked. Do you even know what language half our system is written in? Do you know where the undocumented patches live? Of course you don't. Adrian carried this company while you were polishing your MBA resume. By the end of that day, Helix had lost $12 million in contracts. Clients jumped ship. Lawsuits began to stack higher than quarterly reports. Some engineers quit on the spot, unwilling to be part of a sinking vessel. Within a week, Evan was quietly escorted out of the building, his polished shoes squeaking on the marble floor as the doors shut behind him for the last time. But by then, the damage was irreversible. Meanwhile, I sat on my balcony, sipping coffee, watching the sunrise with a calm I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in nearly a decade, the wait was gone. No urgent 2 a.m. calls. No last-minute patches to save a client demo. No arrogant managers sneering at my worth. Just peace. My phone, however, was anything but quiet. Recruiters flooded my inbox. Competitors who had once courted Helix's clients now courted me, some offering double, some triple what Helix had ever paid. Venture capitalists dangled opportunities. A few even offered to bankroll me if I wanted to launch my own company. And then, one evening, a message arrived that made me pause. It was from Jonathan himself. Adrian, I made the mistake of letting someone else decide your worth. Helix can't survive without you. Name your terms. Whatever you want. I sat staring at the message for a long while. If this had happened years earlier, I would have jumped at the chance. The younger me, the one desperate for approval, for validation, would have run back, maybe even worked harder to prove myself. But that version of me no longer existed. I thought about Evan's smug grin. I thought about the paper with that insulting $50 raise. And most of all, I thought about the countless nights I had given away, believing that loyalty and sacrifice would someday be respected. Now, I understood something far more valuable. Respect isn't given freely. It's a currency. And once it's spent, you don't get it back. I typed slowly, deliberately, until the message was just one simple sentence. Respect is worth more than money, and you already spent it. I hit send, turned off my phone, and leaned back into the quiet. For the first time in years, I smiled, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with freedom. Because sometimes revenge isn't sabotage. Sometimes it's silence, walking away, letting the empire you built collapse under the weight of its own arrogance. And in the end, the real question wasn't who they fired. It was who they could never replace.